Somewhere in a garage right now, a cyclist is on their knees, sealant across their hands, fighting a tire that will not seat on the rim. They paid extra for this wheel. They were told it would make them faster, safer, and almost immune to flats. 20 minutes and a stained sealant later, they're wondering whether any of that was actually true. Tubeless tires are now the default choice on most road and gravel bikes above a certain price. Wheel brands present it simply as the modern standard. Shops recommend it almost automatically, the way they once pushed a triple chainring. Ask 10 experienced riders why tubeless is better though, and you'll get 10 different, half-remembered answers about rolling resistance, flats, and lower pressure. Somewhere between the marketing slide and the workshop floor, the actual evidence got lost. So here's the real question. Does removing the inner tube from a bicycle wheel genuinely make you faster, more comfortable, and safer? Or did an entire generation of cyclists got sold more maintenance and more cost for a promise that only partly holds up? Start with what tubeless actually is, because most riders can describe the result without understanding the mechanism. A tubeless tire seals directly against the rim, using an airtight rim bed, a tighter bead that locks against the rim wall, and a splash of liquid latex sealant that plugs small punctures from the inside. No inner tube means no pinch flats, and the sealant is meant to close a puncture from a thorn or a shard of glass before you even notice the hiss. The pitch from the industry is straightforward. Lower rolling resistance because there's no inner tube flexing and rubbing against the tire casing with every rotation.
Fewer flats because sealant handles the small stuff automatically, and the option to run lower pressure since there's no tube to pinch against the rim on a hard hit, which the industry says means more comfort and more grip through corners. Riders believe this partly because it's partly true and partly because of where tubeless came from. Mountain bikers adopted it in the late 1990s to survive terrain full of thorns and rock strikes, and it worked. When that same technology reached the road peloton and then the showroom floor, the assumption traveled with it. If it's good enough for professional off-road racing, it must be strictly better for everyone. That assumption is exactly where the story gets complicated. Independent laboratory testing, the kind performed on rolling drums under controlled load and speed, not on a marketing slide, does confirm that tubeless setups produce less rolling resistance than a standard butyl inner tube, and the advantage grows as pressure drops. At the low pressures used off-road, that gap can be worth several watts per tire. That's a genuinely meaningful, measurable difference. But here's the detail the marketing rarely mentions. That same independent testing shows a tubeless setup performs almost identically to a simple latex inner tube, not a cheap butyl one. Latex tubes are lighter, more supple, and nearly as fast as tubeless, without the sealant, the specific rim tape, or the 20-minute wrestling match. The honest comparison was never tubeless versus tubes. It was tubeless versus whichever tube the industry chose to put in the test. On a road bike, where pressures sit far higher than off-road, the rolling resistance advantage of tubeless shrinks to a fraction of a watt in many cases.
That's real, but it's a marginal gain for a racer counting seconds, not a transformation for a rider doing a Saturday century. The comfort claim holds up a little differently. Running lower pressure genuinely reduces how much energy a wheel loses absorbing small road surface irregularities, a real effect engineers call impedance, and tubeless makes lower pressure safer to run because there's no tube left to pinch. That part of the pitch is legitimate. How much it matters to you depends entirely on how rough your roads are and how much you weigh. Then there's the weight claim, which sounds simple and rarely is. Removing an inner tube saves real weight, but sealant has mass too, typically 30 to 60 grams per tire, and it needs replacing every 2 to 6 months as it dries out inside the tire, or it stops sealing anything at all. Add tubeless valve stems and reinforced rim tape, and the total weight saving over a good tube often shrinks to nearly nothing. Ownership tells its own story. Mounting a tubeless tire for the first time can be a genuine fight, sometimes requiring an air compressor rather than a hand pump just to get the bead to snap into place. Sealant dries into rubbery flakes inside a tire left unused for a season. A sidewall cut that a tube would have shrugged off can bypass sealant entirely and end a ride on the roadside. None of this makes tubeless bad. It makes it a system that demands upkeep the box rarely mentions. Add up sealant refills, occasional valve replacements, and the extra time a shop spends fighting a stubborn bead, and a genuine tubeless habit can cost a rider more than $100 a year beyond simply carrying spare tubes. For a racer chasing marginal gains, that's a reasonable price for real watts. For a commuter riding to work twice a day, it's a maintenance subscription for a benefit they may barely notice. Now, for the part of this story that has nothing to do with marketing and everything to do with genuine engineering caution. In the early 2020s, standards bodies harmonized their rules for a rim design called hookless, which drops the small hook at the rim's edge that traditionally locks a tire bead in place. Hookless rims are lighter and cheaper to manufacture, and they arrived bundled with the tubeless wave. The engineering trade-off is real. Testing standards require a hooked rim to withstand 1.5 times its rated maximum pressure before failure. A hookless rim only has to withstand 1.1 times that rating, a noticeably smaller margin for error. To compensate, standards bodies capped hookless pressure at roughly 5 bar, about 72.5 pounds per square inch, and tightened the rule that a tire's marked width must sit within 2 millimeters of the rim's actual profile. That sounds tidy on paper, except most tires already on shelves were designed and pressure rated for old-style hooked rims, not this newer standard. One of the industry's own tire engineers has pointed out there is still no dedicated hookless tire standard, so the maximum pressure printed on a tire's sidewall is often inherited from testing done for a completely different rim design. A professional rider's tire losing pressure mid-race in recent years put this exact mismatch under public scrutiny, and several wheel brands have since tightened their published compatibility charts in response. None of this means hookless rims are dangerous when used correctly, within the tire width and pressure the manufacturer actually specifies.
It means the safety margin is thinner than it used to be, and a thinner margin requires riders to read the compatibility chart instead of assuming any tubeless tire fits any tubeless wheel. So, who should actually choose tubeless? A competitive racer on rough or gravel terrain gains real, measurable watts and genuine flat protection, and the maintenance is worth it. A long-distance or bike-packing rider crossing debris-strewn roads gains real peace of mind from self-sealing small punctures far from the nearest bike shop. A weekend road rider on clean pavement is chasing a rolling resistance gain measured in fractions of a watt against a maintenance routine measured in actual hours. A daily commuter is very often better served by a quality tire, a latex or good butyl tube, and a spare in a saddlebag. And if you're not mechanically confident and don't enjoy fighting with tools on a Sunday afternoon, that's not a character flaw. It's simply information about which system fits your life. None of this is a verdict against tubeless. It's real engineering, tested and measurable, solving a genuine problem for the riders who actually have that problem. What it isn't is a universal upgrade every cyclist owes it to themselves to buy. And it isn't a technology to bolt onto a wide tire and a hookless rim without first checking whether that specific combination was actually designed to work together. Back in that garage, the cyclist finally gets the bead to seat with a satisfying crack.